you see that Bernie Sanders leading in the polls. Bernie Sanders crushing it even on Fox News. Bernie Sanders crushing it, donors. Well, I guess it makes sense then that the United Corporations of America are having backroom dinners trying to figure out how in the hell to stop this man. So if you came to this late, I said from the beginning, remember, the DNC's lawyer in the DNC election fraud lawsuit literally opened his mouth and publicly said, sure, it's legal. Yeah, we could do whatever we want. We could decide the nominee in a back room over cigars. I'm about to read you an article that I think kind of shows that's exactly what they're doing. When I say the United Corporations of America, this article I'm about to read you is the United Corporations of America freaking the fuck out that socialism is popular and this train, this Bernie Sanders train, it's going full steams a go. And the only way they could do it, the only way they could stop it is to throw the conductor off, and that would be Bernie Sanders. But the problem is, if they throw that conductor off, the train's going to stop and crash anyway, which I'll explain in a bit. But this article just brings me such joy, a little anger too, but joy, because I love seeing rich, wealthy, douchey donors scared shitless. Makes me happy. Let's read it. When Leah Daughtry, a former Democratic Party official, addressed a closed-door gathering of about 100 wealthy liberal donors in San Francisco last month, all it took was a review of the 2020 primary rules to throw a scare in them. Can you imagine how many of those wealthy elites in San Francisco were smoking cigars over caviar? Democrats are likely to go into their convention next summer without having settled on a presidential nominee, said Ms. Daughtry, who ran her party's convention in 2008 and 2016, the last two times the nomination was contested. And Senator Bernie Sanders is well positioned to be one of the last candidates standing, she noted. I think I freaked them out, Ms. Daughtry recalled with a chuckle, an assessment that was confirmed by three other attendees. They are hardly alone. From canopy-filled fundraisers on the coast to the cloakrooms of Washington, canopy-filled fundraisers on the coast to the cloakrooms of Washington. Oh my God, I could imagine the delicious oysters being fed at these canopy-filled fundraisers on the coast. Maybe they're going out for an afternoon yacht, followed by a little massage, a little mud mask. Oh, God, I need to be invited to this so I could throw up in their face. Mainstream Democrats are increasingly worried that their effort to defeat President Trump in 2020 could be complicated by Mr. Sanders in a political scenario all too reminiscent of how Mr. Trump himself seized the Republican nomination in 2016. So already the New York Times is framing it that Bernie is the reason Trump won in 2016. It's not. How some Democrats are beginning to ask, do they thwart a 70-something candidate from outside the party structure who is immune to intimidation or incentive and wields support from an unwavering base without simply reinforcing his "the establishment is out to get me" message, the same grievance Mr. Trump used to great effect. But stopping Mr. Sanders, or at least preventing a contentious convention, could prove difficult for Democrats. He has enormous financial advantages, already substantially outraising his Democratic rivals, that could sustain a major campaign through the primaries. And he is well positioned to benefit from a historically large field of candidates that would splinter the vote. If he wins a substantial number of primaries and caucuses and comes in second in others, thanks to his deeply loyal base of voters across many states, he would pick up formidable numbers of delegates for the nomination. That prospect is not only spooking establishment-aligned Democrats, but it is also creating tensions about what, if anything, should be done to halt Mr. Sanders. Some of the party still harbor anger over the 2016 race when he ran against Hillary Clinton and his ongoing resistance to becoming a Democrat. But his critics are chiefly motivated by a fear that nominating an avowed socialist would all but ensure Mr. Trump a second term. God, I want to vomit. There's a growing realization that Sanders could end up winning this thing, or certainly that he stays in so long that he damages the actual winner, said David Brock, the liberal organizer who said he has had discussions with other operatives about an anti-Sanders campaign and believes it should commence sooner rather than later. Let me repeat this. David Brock, a liberal organizer. He's not a liberal organizer, he's a Republican. who said he has had discussions with other operatives about an anti-Sanders campaign and believes it should commence rather sooner than later. So, where do I start? Number one, these are the same fraudulent hucksters that have been huffing and puffing the house down for the last 2.5 years about our frail, gentle, graceful democracy being attacked by Russia and meddling in the campaign by Russia. Yet it's okay if they do it. They're literally, to the New York Times, they're not hiding it, it's talking about how they could thwart democracy, how they could stop the most popular politician in America. What would you call that other than meddling? You're not talking about just putting money behind another candidate. You're not talking about having a debate about ideas. You know, putting your policies forward, having your candidates say, hey, you know, Bernie, we appreciate you like Medicare for All. Here's why we think Medicare for Extra or Medicare for America or whatever bullshit title they come up with is a better plan. And letting the voters decide. You're not talking about empowering the voters to decide the nominee. You're talking about, shall I say it again, meddling or rigging the primary. Why is it okay for these people to distract, deflect, and create a new Cold War for the next 2.5 years ago, which is exactly what they've done, but at the same time, it's fine for them to try to stop the nominee or the most popular candidate? It's not okay. It's a double standard. It's hypocritic. It's fraudulent. And frankly, it's evil. Forget that you're progressive for a second. A lot of you are progressive that are watching. Forget that I'm a progressive. Let's just talk. Put out the labels, put out what you believe, and let's just talk about common sense. Right? So do you generally, like, if you own a business or you're into sports or whatever it is, let's just say competition, do you generally embolden the people that keep losing to have a say in the next race? We're not talking about like your kid who, you just need to encourage them. They keep losing, but, you'll get them next time. You give encouragement to someone keep losing. You're talking about political operatives whose bad ideas, whose greed, who's selling out their souls to corporations, to lobbyists, to special interests, has continually lost and emboldened extreme conservatism like Donald Trump, like Ted Cruz, like Steve King, like Mike Pence, like Paul Ryan, like Mitch McConnell. I could go on and on and on. Why is the New York Times even going to David Brock? Why are we even giving these people that, if there was an actual civilized, sane society, would be in a political witness protection program right now? They lost to an orange orangutan used car salesman. Why do we give a flying fuck what David Brock thinks about who should be the nominee? David Brock should be disgraced. He and his little propaganda army, correct the record, did more to prop up Hillary Clinton, and how'd that work out? And the New York Times, they don't put it in here, but I remember covering Bernie Sanders at 2 or 3 rallies for Hillary Clinton. Do you know Bernie Sanders did more rallies for Hillary Clinton, which a lot of you didn't like, than Barack Obama did? Bernie Sanders barnstormed the country, probably nauseous the whole time, telling people to vote for Hillary Clinton. It's not his fault that Hillary Clinton was a terrible candidate. It's not his fault that she didn't campaign in Wisconsin. Not his fault that they pulled volunteers out of Michigan because they thought it was done and she was going to win Michigan. It's not his fault that her campaign operated based on data, exclusively data, rather than actually getting a pulse of America. So, number one, they're all frauds because they don't care about attacks on our democracy. They are attacking our democracy right out in the open. And I tweeted it early. I don't know how you read this story, and there's more concerning parts, without thinking this is 2016 rigging in the 2020 form. But to some veterans of the still raw 2016 primary, a heavy-handed intervention may only embolden him and his fervent supporters. R.T. Ryback, the former Minneapolis mayor who was vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee in 2016, complained bitterly about the party's tilt towards Mrs. Clinton back then, and warned that it would backfire if his fellow mainstream Democrats, quote, start with the idea that you're trying to stop somebody. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Ryback. If the party fractures again, quote, or if we even have anybody raising an eyebrow of, quote, I'm not happy about this, we're going to lose, and they'll have this loss on their hands, Mr. Ryback said of the anti-Sanders forces, pleading with them to not make him a martyr. I agree. Why don't you just let the people decide? You are not elected, David Brock. You are not elected, Neera Tanden. You are not elected, Center for American Plutocrats. You are not elected, these big donors. Your vote, you go vote for your candidate. You can give as much money as humanly possible to that candidate, but you are not the elected president, Congress, or dog catcher of America. So the people should decide who they want to challenge Donald Trump. Because if you try to take out Bernie Sanders, whatever form the rigging's going to happen this time, you're going to lose probably worse than you did in 2016. Because I got news for you. If Bernie Sanders gets rigged again, if this gets stolen from Bernie Sanders again, you think I would venture to guess maybe 25 to 30% of Bernie Sanders voters would vote for the Democratic nominee if they rig it again. If you want to lose those voters and you want to hand it to Trump, you do that. To a not insignificant number of Democrats, of course, Mr. Sanders' populist agenda, including Medicare for All and a focus on working families, is exactly what the country needs. And he has provided his mettle, having emerged from the margins to mount a surprisingly strong challenge to Mrs. Clinton, earning 13 million votes and capturing 23 primaries or caucuses. The good news for Mr. Sanders' foes is that his polling is down significantly. I don't know what they're talking about. In early nominating states from 2016, he is viewed more negatively among Democrats than many of his top rivals, and he has already publicly vowed to support the party's nominee if he falls short. Of course his polling's down. There's 25 other candidates. Are you kidding? See, this is the problem with corporate media. They don't have any context. It's all subtle, but it's not so subtle. They try to form a narrative that the candidate that they don't like, which would be the New York Times, the Washington Post, Associated Press, CNN, MSNBC, we go on, is down in popularity. Well, in 2016, he was facing 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates at the most. Now he's facing, I think it's up to 19, with a few more to get in. Yeah, it makes sense that his numbers are down a little bit. The vote is splintered. Quote, Bernie Sanders believes the most critical mission we have before us is to defeat Donald Trump, said Faiz Shakir, Mr. Sanders' campaign manager. Any and all decisions over the coming year will emanate from that key goal. Or, as former Senator Claire McCaskill put it, you gotta love how many establishment corporate hacks to get to their quote in this piece. Quote, one thing we have now that we didn't in 16 is the uniting force of Trump. There will be tremendous pressure on Bernie and his followers to fall in line because of what Trump represents. Why would there be pressure on Bernie Sanders, the frontrunner, and his supporters to fall in line? Why wouldn't the pressure be on you, Claire McCaskill, you, David Brock, you, Neera Tanden, you, big dollar donor? You fall in line. If the cards fall where they fall, Bernie Sanders wins the most amount of primaries and caucuses. Bernie Sanders is the nominee, period. So I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think he's good, bad, or otherwise. If Bernie Sanders wins this in a democratic way, you fall in line. Because at that point, you can't actually say your most important thing is defeating Donald Trump. If you refuse to support the candidate with the most momentum, the most volunteers, the most money, the most, viral ability, and the energy, then you don't care about defeating Donald Trump as much as you care about making sure progressive change never, ever comes to happen.
Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statusquo.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statusquo.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.